And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball advantage.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com and find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that and watch and listen to our program daily in its entirety. It's free through just one little click of the button in your telephone. If you're watching, look to the right of the screen. That's me, JB. To the left, that is Darren Goldwater, and we're here until 2 o'clock this afternoon to bring you all the fun from the weekend and much, much more. Across all social media platforms, follow us at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number and our text line, and it's open and available for all of you to get a hold of us there. And whatever you have to say, we'll pop it right up and make it a part of our program, just like we will Wes Mitchell at 12:30 and Colin Taylor at 1:30, Gamecock Central Day of sorts around here to open the month of May. May Day. Happy May, everybody, as we get a little bit closer to Christmas. That's how I always look at the calendar. How far to football season and how far away are we from Christmas? Closer. I have my voice back for the most part, so that's good. And we've got some commitment news to get to. Got a bunch of baseball to get to. It is a pretty packed show. Obviously, the draft this weekend, Darren. A lot of notes on that that we'll fuss and discuss with. So it's going to be another fun day, and good afternoon.
Had a great weekend, so I'm ready to go. I spent almost every second of it, at least it feels like, outside. We went to the Strawberry Festival. We had tons of neighborhood gatherings at the pool, so it was a great weekend. Had a lot of fun. Even went on. It's called the Orbiter, if you know what that ride is. Yeah. So their arms coming out, and then 3 different chairs at the edge of each arm, and as you're spinning around really fast one way, then you're also spinning around this way. And I rode that with my 8-year-old daughter, and both of us survived, so we're good. Happy Monday.
Well, congratulations to you. That is fantastic. Yeah, we were outside the whole weekend, too. I actually shaved a little bit and got some of my tan back, so that's good. And we're putting right along here. Let's go ahead and get to the breaking news for South Carolina. The Gamecocks have flipped a linebacker from Georgia. Donovan Westmoreland has officially announced his intent to not play ball in Athens and will play in the Midlands at Williams-Brice Stadium. Just before we hopped on the air, I was on the phone with what I would call one of my sources in this industry talking about this young man. He is a 4-star kid. I know that some of the recruiting rankings have him as a high 3-star. That's going to change at some point in time here whenever these rankings change soon. He's apparently going to that will increase. He is a major linebacker prospect whom has been committed to Georgia for a couple of months, and he has told Kirby Smart thanks but no thanks, and thank you, and sounds great to Shane Beamer. So that is the latest in a string of commitments for Gamecock football over the last couple of days, going back to Braden Davis's announcement, their quarterback in the 2022 class on Friday. And they also received on Friday a transfer from Tyrese Moss, from Washington State. So he is actually going to come in and be immediately eligible to play football for the Gamecocks this fall. So it's been a good weekend for Carolina as they have been working to improve that roster a little bit. And now today with this news from Donovan Westmoreland, Carolina adds a much-needed linebacker to their 2022 class, and that is now 4 commitments in this class. And I think the summer is going to be quite interesting for South Carolina, Darren, because as things open up, we knew that this class, with the coaching change, everything shut down, we knew this class was going to be low in numbers until the summer. And it looks like this is going to be a pretty busy summer for Gamecock football.
I mean, it feels like it's trending in the right direction. At least there's some positive momentum there. I mean, if you follow Mike Yuva on Twitter, if you don't, you should. There are certain days when he tweets out like it's been a good day for Twitter because there's nobody complaining. All these good things for the Gamecocks. While the baseball series this weekend is not one of those things, if you just focus on football recruiting right now and recently, there's reason to be optimistic about that aspect of the program right now. Now see what they do when they get onto campus and onto the field.
Yeah, positions of need this weekend is what they are too. They need members of the secondary. They've got an experienced one now in Tyrese Ross, and we'll see when he gets to campus exactly how much impact he'll make. But certainly they needed more numbers back there, and they definitely needed competition, and he'll provide that. I mean, he started for Mike Leach up in Pullman when Mike Leach was still there at Wazoo. I guess, maybe he didn't really jive that well with the new staff, so he's going to be a Gamecock now. And then of course this linebacker commitment today, flipping from the University of Georgia. It's another position of need for South Carolina. We've known for a while that linebackers, secondary members, they need to get some good ones if they can, and they really needed to get their quarterback in this class as well. And Braden Davis is going to be that guy. So we're going to talk about all this with Wes Mitchell at 12:30. I'll say this: obviously, Wes Mitchell is with Gamecock Central with rivals. When it comes to recruiting rankings and this, that, and the other, some people pay attention, some people don't. Some people kind of do here and there. And they're all a little bit different. But the ESPN 300, and I'm going to talk to Wes about this today. I'm not asking him necessarily to compare ESPN's rankings to rivals, but the ESPN 300 has quarterback Braden Davis, who's now committed to Carolina, as the 39th ranked prospect in the country. And that is about 60 slots higher than Gunnar Stockton.
Wow.
Who at one point in time was South Carolina's quarterback commitment, decommitted after Will Muschamp was fired and Shane Beamer was hired in Columbia, South Carolina, and he is now, of course, committed to Georgia. But by ESPN, the 96th ranked player in the nation, and Braden Davis is 39th. Hadn't seen that anywhere else. So I'll be interested to see what Wes Mitchell says about that. Again, all these services are a little bit different. They all, I can't really explain how they do it, but they all are a little bit different. But that caught my eye, certainly. So who knows what that means.
39th quarterback or
no, player.
39th overall
player.
Yeah, in the 300. Yeah,
right.
Okay, yeah. So, that's impressive. And like you said, the fact that he's that far ahead of Gunnar Stockton, who was
interesting, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting because not a whole lot's known about Braden Davis. He only popped onto radars of the fan base really a couple months ago when it just kind of started trickling out, this Delaware guy, this Delaware pipeline. But Gunnar Stockton's been known about for years.
Right.
Was the quarterback of the future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Braden Davis, they're obviously growing up, no offense, but playing your football in the state of Delaware doesn't do you a lot of good sometimes when it comes to the national scene. And then their season was canceled up there. And so he had transferred down to Florida and played at a high school in Florida. So, he had some movement. He's kind of a late bloomer too. He's a thin kid, Darren. He's 6'5", 195 pounds, but we'll see how it all works out. I mean, we're going to talk to Wes about this and see exactly what all of that means. I think by rivals, Braden Davis is ranked lower, but much lower and lower than Gunnar Stockton. But again, the ESPN rankings have this thing totally flipped around. 39th ranked prospect in the country and 60 spots almost ahead of Gunnar Stockton. So, we'll see what that means. I don't know. Gunnar Stockton, the competition he's played against has been criticized. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think that's fair, Darren. I mean, Jordan Birch played at Hammond. People have criticized the schedule that Hammond plays every year because their skis in South Carolina. And yeah, is their schedule as good as a 5A schedule in this state? Well, no, of course it's not. The athletes are different. I understand that, but the player is still the player, period. If you're an elite player, yeah, competition is important, but there are certain guys who are on that level that are just on that level. And that's, people have said this for a while about CJ Stokes. I've repeatedly said this running back at Hammond, I think, is the best tailback to come out of this state. You saw him in person in the fall when they played at First Baptist, I believe.
Yep.
Either way. Porter-Gaud, that's right. And I've said, look, I think he's the best running back to come out of this state since Marcus Lattimore. And people are like, well, he didn't play anybody. Okay. I mean, so he's still a hell of a prospect. I mean, that that doesn't count for some kids. And I don't think it counts for that young man. And I would say the same thing about Braden Davis, if there are those who've criticized that by playing in the state of Delaware, which by the way, has produced a couple pretty good players.
You got Luke Doty already on campus. You have Colton Gothier, who apparently had a decent spring, already on campus. This guy doesn't come on campus for another year. He's not expected right now to just jump in and start. So
you hope not, right?
Right. So he's got room to put pounds on. He's got room to grow and mature. And if he's not ready immediately because of the level of play, fine. Let him learn. That's okay. That's part of this process.
Yeah, that's a kid that you more than likely aren't going to want to be taking snaps, hopefully, significant snaps as, like maybe the starting quarterback for, I don't know, at least a couple of years. I mean, that would be the way that you want it to work out. So we'll see. We'll see how it all works. But again, pretty good weekend for Carolina, culminating with this flip today for South Carolina. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It is also our text line, and it is open for all of you. Craig says 3 out of 4 are 4 stars if Westmoreland gets a 4th star, which he's projected to at some point in time. That is true, Craig, obviously, and from what I understand, they're just getting started. There may be some more surprises in the future for South Carolina, not in the near future, but in the actual future, just based on things that I've heard in the last little while. All right, we'll get into some of the draft stuff in a little bit. Let's get you caught up on what happened this weekend in baseball. Darren, Charleston Southern lost 2 of 3 to Gardner-Webb. They're 14-20, 14-16 in the Big South. The College of Charleston lost 2 of 3. They're 18-18, 8-7 in the CAA. The Citadel was swept by VMI, and Friday night's game had fireworks, big ones, after a pitch was thrown behind a hitter for the Keydets, and somebody in the bullpen had something to say, and then the benches cleared, and the Dogs and Keydets found their way in the middle of the ballpark down at the Joe, ready to scuffle and ruffle and throw blows. So they decided to can that sucker in the 8th inning with VMI in front 13-5. A couple of military schools getting after each other. Certainly Dogs 11-28, 3-17 in the Southern Conference. Coastal Carolina took 2 of 3 from Georgia State. They're now 21-18, 5-7 in the Sun Belt. Gamecocks swept in Oxford. More on this in a moment. Now 26-15, 11-10 in the SEC. Still ranked 19th. D1Baseball.com's poll. And how about this weekend for Clemson? I thought they would certainly take the series, and didn't they take it? They swept it over Louisville, 21-18. Now 15-12 are the Tigers in the ACC, and they pounded Louisville, bookending the weekend with major wins, 11-3, 15-5. Caden Grice, if there's anybody in baseball that is the National Player of the Week over this guy, the system is rigged. He was unbelievable. 9 of 13 this weekend. I think he had 4 home runs. It's a freshman. This kid might very well be the National Freshman of the Year. I'm telling you. He can play. We've been saying this for weeks. All the Fire Monty leaders out there, y'all can go hide back in your closets for a little while. They've now won 2 series in a row. I'm telling you, it was just a matter. Nobody ever pays attention to anything. Like, they see losses and it's fire the coach and get rid of the players, burn the whole damn place down, right? Nobody wanted to pay attention to all the injuries. Nobody wanted to pay attention to they had to replace bookend or front end starters. Nobody wanted to pay attention to any of this stuff. They had a lot of stuff going on to try to get this roster to mesh it might be meshing at the right time. This is when you want to click. And we, a couple weeks ago, I'll pat this show on the back. We called it. I said, look here, you said the same thing, man. This guy, Monty Lee, knows what he's doing, and he's trying to get these guys to play at the right time. The Louisville series set up perfect. They won last weekend. They've won this weekend. They got upstate at Georgia Tech next weekend, a very winnable series again. Clemson, I think, with that this weekend, they're right on it. They might be projected in this week, as far as I'm concerned, maybe a low 3 seed, but they're trending very much in the right direction.
They needed this. There's no telling if this was the fix. There's no telling if this translates into more wins. I do understand the griping of Clemson fans prior to this because they haven't been under 500 in, 70 years? So I get it, because that's where the thing was trending. But we were just saying, hold on, because there's every opportunity in front of them to either change the course or to just let this thing slide out of repair. Right now, they're on the right path. This weekend, not only Caden Grice, they hit 350 as a team. They slugged 631, a 500 on-base percentage in the series for Clemson. And Jeffrey Gilbert had a big day in the second game of the overall series. We're actually watching this one on my phone at the pool, and things got a little tight there. I believe it was tied at 4 in the 8th inning, and all of a sudden, here comes the lefty. Got out of that, led them to the win. I think they got that one in extras. Good weekend. They needed it. Now let's see what they do with it.
It's a team with enough talent. If they've got some momentum to get into the postseason, they can be dangerous. They will not be hosting, but they can be dangerous. They could work their way all the way up to a 2 seed. They really could. This team's good enough. They are talented enough, and they are coached well enough to get there. We'll see what that means. For South Carolina, what does it mean, the fact that they were swept this weekend in Oxford? Well, more than likely what it means is they're off the host line. I would like to predict that Ole Miss is probably back on the 1 line. Gamecocks have probably fallen to a 2, and they're going to have some work to do to be able to be a host again in the postseason. Now, 46 programs submitted bids to be able to host. Carolina is one of those. 16, of course, will be selected. They'll whittle it down to 20 coming up in 1 week. So about a week from today, or next week sometime, they're going to have this thing down to about 20. It is critical. It is critical for South Carolina to beat North Florida tomorrow and win the series next weekend at home against Mississippi State and try to get to 29-16 or so, which would put them at 13-11 in the league to stay in that mix. I think they will stay in the mix. The top, I don't see any way at this point in time, unless you just really crap the bed down the stretch here, but I don't see any way that the top 8 in this league, which includes Ole Miss, Florida, and South Carolina, they're all in that little group right now. Maybe start bringing Georgia into the mix a little bit. I don't see any way that they really drop way out of host contention, but if you want to stay like on the line, you got to win the series this coming weekend. I don't know that there's any way around that. I think they have to win it.
Right. And the importance more so because what you pointed out, they said the week of May 10th. So we're at May 3rd now. So it's next week when these 20 sites are announced. So you don't have a full season of resume building, I guess, to put in front of the committee. You got to do it now. Now they do have the wiggle room barely of 4 teams or 4 regional sites, but you don't want to lose back-to-back series prior to this announcement, because while they're bringing out a list of 20, and they might not list it 1 through 20, it might just be 20 generic, but I promise you on their board in private, it is listed 1 through 20. If the Gamecocks get swept at Ole Miss, which they did, and then they turn around and lose the series to Mississippi State, if they're in that group, they are much closer to 20 than they are to 1.
Absolutely.
And that's not where you want to be.
Well, there's no question, Darren. And let's do some resume comparisons here. Right now, one thing that is helping them is their RPI is still at 15. So that's really good. And they also swept Florida. That's starting to mean less and less. That was early on in the SEC schedule. The Gators took 2 of 3 this weekend from Vanderbilt. That's critical. They've also taken a series from Ole Miss, as Florida. They took 2 of 3 from Ole Miss. Of course, both of those series were at home, but they still took the series. So they've got head-to-heads over the Rebels. They've got head-to-heads over Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt, no matter what, is going to be a regional host. They don't have that over South Carolina, but their RPI is about 14 slots lower than the Gamecocks. They're 6-9 in that versus RPI 1 through 25, which I think is certainly important. You look at Ole Miss, who's now climbed back up to 12. By the way, Florida's ranked 10th. Ole Miss is at 31-12, 13-8 in the league. Their RPI is at 9. They're 9-7 versus the top 25 RPI teams in the country. And, of course, they now have that series win over the Gamecocks. And then you've got South Carolina at 26-15, and their RPI sits at 15, which is great, but they're just 4-11 versus the top 25, the RPI top 25, 4-11. They were 4-8 going into the weekend. And what you were really hoping is that last weekend and this coming weekend, you could go 3-3 in that stretch. Now the only way to do that is to sweep Mississippi State, which, boy, you're asking, that's a tall order with the Dogs coming to town this weekend. So Carolina, they got to get really, really, really roaring to be able to firmly be in it. I'm kind of predicting on this. And by the way, it's probably a good thing that Clemson is playing well right now, because if Carolina can go beat them in a midweek game up there, that's going to help them a lot. So, but if you want to take out the SEC tournament, if you want to take that out of play, which is a place that they generally don't play well, you got to, you probably have to win the last 3 series to be able to just say we're firmly a 1 seed, we're firmly a host. There's no doubt about it. Now, there's the off chance that they could be selected as a host and not be the 1 seed at home. Mm-hmm. There is a chance of that. But because there are so many teams in this league that are competing, it's not like there's just 3 or 4. There's 8. So because there's so many, it's going to be that's a tough task. Like, well, we're selected as a host site, which, by the way, we're only open at 50% capacity, and everyone else in the league's 100%, which the NCAA has mandated at 50%. But believe it or not, that potentially could change based on some chatter that's out there amongst the coaching staffs across college baseball. Nothing official, nothing public, but that actually could change as well. So we'll see. But Mississippi State at Kentucky, Tennessee, you're talking about 9 games, Darren. They're 1 game over 500 in the SEC. They really somehow, some way down the stretch, need to get to 6-3, 17-13 in the league, win all their midweeks, and I think they'd probably be able to host with that.
And obviously, with Mississippi State on deck, they've been top 10 all year long. There's an opportunity to get some wins in there. What I thought was interesting, Clemson has jumped 15 spots in the RPI in the last week. Louisville is behind them in the RPI now. Louisville's at 56 and Clemson's at 51. So, I mean, how beneficial, while great and necessary and needed and every other adjective you can put there for Clemson this weekend, how beneficial was this series in the committee's eyes for the Tigers?
Yeah, huge. I mean, if you were asking me to create the field today, I think Clemson's in. I think they're in. I think they're probably a very low 3 seed, which means you're more than likely going to travel to an Arkansas or a Vanderbilt or something like that as a 3 seed. But I would put them in. And let's remember something. When they were 3 games under 500 just a couple of weeks ago, they were considered one of the last 5 teams out. They've done nothing but win since then. So I think they're in. Again, that would match them more with one of the tougher regionals in the country, probably going to Arkansas or Vanderbilt or a Mississippi State. I would predict an SEC team on the road. That's what I would kind of predict, just based on history and geographical situations, consideration, and things like that. But, season's not over. Louisville, though, has dropped to 15th in the polls. I don't know. Here's my question. Louisville has long been considered a host. I don't know that they are. This series loss doesn't knock them out. I get that. They lost the whole Pittsburgh series because of COVID issues in the Panthers program, which would have been a big series for them. Pittsburgh's actually got a pretty good baseball team this year. Okay. But if they slide, does that make up ground for another SEC team? See, this is where the questions come in. I get it. In a perfect world, we like to have regionals all over the country for geographical purposes, and I respect that. But the top 16 seeds are supposed to be rewarded regionals, and the top 16 seeds are supposed to be the top 16 teams in the country. And if it just so happens that 9 of the top 16 or 8 of the top 16 are in one league and literally all in one neck of the woods, unfortunately, then so be it, right? I mean, you should be rewarded based on your performance.
Yeah, and that's the way it'll be. It's got to be hurting Louisville right now, and they've been top 10 almost all year, and they were knocked out here, by the way, as I'm saying this. Here's the latest top 25, or at least the top 10, Gamecocks down to 19. But it's not beneficial for Louisville that they lost that Pittsburgh series, because now it's 2 weeks since the committee or college baseball has seen Louisville win a baseball game. And that, what have you done for me lately? Not only 2 weeks since you won, but in the most recent weekend, you were swept by a team that was fledgling, to put it very nicely. It was a very bad weekend for Louisville. It was a much worse weekend for Louisville than it was for the Gamecocks at Ole Miss. This hurt them badly. The fact that now they're pushing just inside 60 in the RPI, this hurt them a lot.
Yeah, no question. I'll be interested to see what this week's projected field looks like. Again, these are, none of this is a done deal. I mean, we just got into May, but I'll be interested to see what it looks like, because last week Louisville was a projected 12 seed. South Carolina was a projected 14 seed. Pittsburgh, was a 15 seed. I would almost venture a guess that there might be 3 of these seeds knocked out. Pittsburgh, Louisville, and South Carolina not on the one line anymore as a top seeded regional host. I would almost venture all 3 of them are out, probably should be out. And I think that Ole Miss and Florida should be back in. And if that is the case, Fayetteville, Nashville, Starkville, Knoxville, that's 4. And then Oxford and Florida, that's 6. And can South Carolina maybe play their way back into that? Of course they can. They have the opportunities there. They absolutely can accomplish it. How are they going to accomplish that? We're going to get into more of that in a little while. But I'll tell you what, it's not all Thomas Farr's fault. They don't score a lot of runs for him on Friday nights, Darren, but they've got to get a spark on Fridays. They got to get a spark. And it's not his fault. And sometimes you're just kind of a product of the elements that surround you. And right now, the elements that surround Thomas Farr aren't good. Defensively, they were not good on this past Friday night. And offensively, they weren't good either. And so they got to get a spark. I think maybe I might have an idea. I don't know who's listening, and I don't know if they're even considering this, but we're going to talk about that coming up in just a little while on our program. Got plenty to get to with the draft. Clemson and South Carolina. Nice weekend in the NFL draft for both programs. So, and we have some additional undrafted free agent notes to get to there, as well as Coastal Carolina and some other discussion that involves what happened with the National Football League. We've got some Major League Baseball stuff to get to. Now have some news from golf that is state-related as well. We're going to pass along in just a little while. Colin Taylor's ahead at 1:30. We'll talk to him about the regional situation and maybe some adjustments coming for South Carolina baseball. But up next, on a commitment day for Carolina football, it's Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. It's actually been a commitment weekend for the Gamecocks. He's going to tell you all about that right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every 2021 Tiguan, $3,500 off. Every 2021 Atlas, $5,300 off. Every new Volkswagen available with 0 down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump? Strike 2! If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save $5,300 on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love.
at Stokes V-Dub.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Spring is officially here, and there's no better place to bring it in than the Dog and Duck. 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Park West, Bell Hall, and Clements Ferry Road, all of them with gorgeous outdoor seating to take advantage of their daily food and drink specials. Through the end of April, $5 Sweetwater pints. Food specials like Taco Tuesday and the Game Day Burger every Wednesday. It's all available at Dog and Duck. There are 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Three new Gamecocks. We'll eventually hear that played in Williams-Brice Stadium. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. It is May, and it's Monday, but it is May at least. Getting closer to football season, no doubt. Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford here till 2 o'clock this afternoon, and joined by one of the great hair pieces we have, Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going?
Good. Busy Monday, busy weekend for Gamecock football. Today, some news. South Carolina has flipped a linebacker who has been committed to Georgia. Tell us about the latest for Carolina.
Yeah, it actually came down, I guess, about 32 minutes ago, noon. Donovan Westmoreland flipping from Georgia to South Carolina. He's from Griffin, Georgia. Listed as an outside linebacker, but I think, a lot of times these descriptive positions we use now probably aren't necessarily all that accurate anymore because, as an outside linebacker, like a traditional linebacker, is he more like an edge rush type guy? Watching the film, I would sort of put that edge designation on him. This is a guy sort of, you call it the buck in the old scheme. They call it an edge in this scheme, probably more of a pass rush specialist type guy. Listed at, I think, 6'2", 6'3", 210 pounds. He's actually put on about 20 pounds since he was weighed in. So he's probably more into that 230-pound range at this point. Still has a whole year to go as far as his high school career goes. And then obviously you'll get him into a college weight program and probably put even more weight on him. So obviously, you start to look. We know South Carolina's in pretty good shape on their defensive line right now, but you start to sort of project ahead next year, the year after that. Several upperclassmen that are edge players right now. So you start to sort of fill in those spots for the future. And, I think anytime you flip a guy from Georgia, it's good for you as far as perception as well.
I was about to ask that. What does that mean? I mean, he's a kid from the state of Georgia. He's a Peach State product, committed to the Dogs. That's rare, isn't it not, Wes, where you see a guy, a home state kid like that committed to Georgia, decide to flip to one of their rivals?
Yeah, and I think you take full advantage if you're South Carolina. I mean, they've we've talked about it quite a bit on Gamecock Central. It was going to be hard to build momentum until June, until July, when you can actually get the kids on campus. And we've been sort of projecting that they're going to start to build some momentum in June. They'll have guys in for officials, they have guys in for camp, and it's almost like they got off to a little bit of an early start here at the beginning of May, and I think they'll be able to build that going into the summer. But certainly you get your quarterback on Friday, you flip a guy from Georgia here on Monday. That gives you a little bit. I firmly believe recruiting momentum is a real thing. So that gives you a little bit of mo going into the summer. Kids want to play with other kids. They start to get to know. Kids want to play with other kids who are good players. And prospects also, they pay attention to who's, sort of the hot name right now. So it's going to be hard to build that we've always said without official visits, and now you sort of get a little early start on that.
My understanding, Wes, and I'm no expert like you, so you'll have to correct me if I'm incorrect here. My understanding, though, is that Donovan Westmoreland, for those who love the star system, oh, man, he's only a 3-star. He sucks. My understanding is he is actually a prime prospect, a prime candidate, I should say, to be potentially bumped to a 4-star.
Well, I mean, he's a high 3-star guy right now. So certainly if you're on the edge of that, you're going to have every opportunity to bump up or bump down. He's a number, I want to say 37 outside linebacker in the country right now, which puts you right. I mean, you're right on the edge there of 4-star status, and you're a 5.7 3-star. That's the highest of the 3-star designations for Rivals.com, which, again, here's the thing: if you're a high 3-star player and you play up to that standard, you're still obviously a very good player. A high 3-star is a guy who contributes in college and is a starter in college. So, I think we sort of lose sight of that as well as far as these rankings go. I mean, I think a solid pickup for South Carolina, a guy who can pass rush off the edge, a guy who knows how to use his hands, a very quick first step. Again, he's going to continue to add weight, has already added weight since he was last sort of entered into our database there as far as an update goes. So, I think all the way around, anytime you can get guys that can rush off the edge, that's a good thing.
12:36 on a Monday afternoon. Final question on this young man, Donovan Westmoreland, the latest Gamecocks commitment. Did he have a prior relationship with Shane Beamer or somebody else on this staff? How did this come about?
I mean, they've been recruiting the guy for a while now. I think it was it was out of nowhere as far as a public perception here, but they've been in on him for some time, recruiting him. And, we talked when they hired this staff. Jimmy Lindsey is a guy who has some very, very strong, long-standing ties in Georgia, in the greater Atlanta area, and is someone that, I think was able to work some of those connections here and get in good with him. And, I think it's always good if you have a guy that has recruited a particular area, even if he was at another school, those relationships stand up, they hold up as far as, being in a situation where you've built the trust of the coaching staffs at those schools you're recruiting. So those staffs aren't going to push their kids to you, but they're at least going to give you a good review and say, hey, you can trust what this guy is telling you. So I think the long-standing relationships there with Jimmy Lindsey as far as just in that area, in these schools, and then Mike Peterson, who actually, Mike Peterson, as far as how you project this kid, he would be his position coach. So Mike P and Jimmy Lindsey really did a good job of sort of tag teaming this recruitment and putting South Carolina in a good position here. And, like I said, I think you look at that edge spot, so many upperclassmen there. This actually, it doesn't really seem like a position of need when you look at the current team, but if you're recruiting in an ideal world, you're recruiting for a couple of years down the road. So in that sense, I think it is kind of a position of need that they were able to get done here.
Well, this weekend they picked up 3 prospects, and they're all positions of need for South Carolina. Before we get to the quarterback, Braden Davis, let's talk about Tyrese Ross. He is a safety who's transferring from Wazoo, Washington State, where he played his ball in Pullman originally, of course, under Mike Leach. What have you learned about this young man and why he chose to come to South Carolina? And on top of that, Wes, what type of player is he?
Yeah, he's a big hitter. I first talked to him, I think maybe a week and a half ago. We ran a story on him then, and he was hearing from South Carolina, but was waiting to kind of find out what it was going to look like as far as scholarships, when they'd be able to bring him in, if South Carolina wanted to actually go that direction. And they obviously decided to. It sort of really picked up this past week as the week went along, more and more conversation there. And then he ultimately sort of got the official offer on Friday, committed on the spot to Shane Beamer. This is a kid that sort of brings some authority to their secondary. He's a big hitter, a guy that, let's be honest, that is a huge need position for South Carolina. And they need not only quality, they need quantity there. They struggled at times when they had injuries in the secondary. They truly struggled in the spring to even like put together the full two deep you need to go kind of scrimmage out there without really diving into the walk-on pool there. So right. I think it was big from that standpoint. I'll be curious to see how much he's developed. He really didn't play a lot last year. Now, Washington State, they only played 4 games as it was. So you could miss a couple of games and essentially miss like the entire season with everything with the Pac-12 and COVID and sort of how everything went out there. So I'm not going to speculate why he only played in 1 game, missed 3. I don't know the exact reasons there, but I think this is a kid that you're not necessarily gonna. It's not really fair to sit here and project him to be like an all SEC type immediate huge impact guy. But I think when you look at his ability and you look at South Carolina's needs, certainly that you can see why they're going out trying to add a transfer in the secondary and as a guy who will compete to start right away. I think at either safety spot, they've talked some nickel as well. Could he fit in at nickel? I think that's a possibility as well. But for the most part, he's played free safety and strong safety and is very comfortable playing either of those spots.
Who out of curiosity, because I'm trying to piece in my mind together maybe what this rotation might look like and what players might be doing what. Who are the prime candidates right now to start at what we would call, or used to call, I don't know what they're calling it now, the spur position in this 4-2-5?
Yeah, that would be the nickel right now.
Okay.
They call it the nickel or the big nickel. And, right now, David Spalding, he got the first reps at it in the spring game. So obviously he was a transfer in as well. He's sort of your, I guess, your top candidate right there for right now. It's one of those spots you can go 2 directions with it. You can go with it more as like a hybrid guy, a Jamar Brown type, that's kind of a linebacker, but is kind of a hybrid linebacker, or you can play a true DB there. And sometimes, Cam Smith has taken reps there, but I think Cam Smith is going to be vital to what they do at this sort of true cornerback spots on the outside. So that's really probably not an option for them. So I would say Spalding is in there. Jamar Brown. I keep going back to Carlin Splittell, the transfer who is not at South Carolina yet, who will be there. I imagine either this month or the beginning of June. I need to check on that. Actually, his skill set fits a lot of what you're looking for at that position. So I would say right now it's David Spalding. You look at Carlin Splittell coming in. He's going to be in that mix. Again, Tyrese Ross could be in that mix. There's several guys who could play it. You almost, I think, in a perfect world, you'd be able to sort of use different guys for different matchups as far as what you were facing. Maybe some weeks and some down and distances, you go more with like a true DB or even a true corner, and then other down and distances, you would actually put in a guy there who's kind of like more of a linebacker type.
Why not RJ Roderick?
Well, I think they want him more at safety, and he can play the nickel spot, and he's done it before. I think they've had him there before, but I think with that position, you're trying to maybe minimize RJ having to match up with slot receivers in the SEC and man coverage. And
gotcha.
They're going to play a lot of man coverage in this defense. There's going to be a lot of situations. You face so much speed at that position in the SEC, and your better offenses that South Carolina is going to face this year. You really sort of have a mismatch there, I think, and we saw that particularly against like a Florida last year. I think we saw that sort of exposed a little bit. Now RJ, I will say, has had a really good spring at the safety spot. Has gotten comfortable there. They're really counting on him there, and frankly, it's sort of like with Cam Smith as well. You almost have to find out who your 2 corners are and who your 2 safeties are, and then try to fill in that nickel spot or spur, whatever we want to call it traditionally, without robbing one of your other spots. So if if other people step up at safety, let's say a Tyrese Ross comes in, steps up at safety, a Jalen Dickerson can play safety, maybe that opens the door to slide RJ Roderick down if that puts your best 5 on the field, because it's always about putting your best 5 out there. And you know what? I think the guy that maybe quietly had a good spring we haven't been talking about is maybe Dominic Hill out there at corner. Again, all these positions aren't in a vacuum. You know, if a couple of guys step up at one spot, it maybe opens it up to where somebody can slide to another spot as long as you can get your best 5 personnel on the field.
Either one of those guys should start at quarterback or Luke Doty. Yes, me. 12:45 on a Monday. Sorry, man. I thought we were still. Aren't we still doing that? Is that not still the joke around here that we take shots at the quarterback? 12:45 on Monday afternoon. Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. I've got a gut feeling GC Live is going to be a lot of fun today. Y'all got a lot of stuff to get to. That's at 2:00, I believe, right? Eastern time, Eastern Standard.
Yes. Is it standard? I always get the standard and the EST, EDT. I don't know.
I don't know what the appropriate thing here.
When 99% of the people that are on Gamecock Central look at their phone, when it says 2:00, tune in to youtube.com/Gamecock Central. And Chris and I will be there talking about something. I can never guarantee what it's going to be about, but we will be running our mouths.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe it'll be about this guy, Braden Davis, latest South Carolina quarterback commitment. He pulled the trigger officially and publicly on Friday evening, I think somewhere around 6:00 West. Now, I do want to point this out. And of course, you work for Gamecock Central, which is part of the Rivals Network. And everything is a little different out there depending on what you look at. ESPN's 300 has Braden Davis as the 39th ranked prospect in the country. And that is about 60 slots higher than Gunnar Stockton, who at one point in time was Carolina's quarterback in this class. Now, everybody can take that for what it's worth. Generally, when someone's trying to prove a point, they take the higher of the rankings and go out and, yap about it on social media so they can, be all big and bad and things like that. But I also think that there's some truth in that, right? I mean, he's a good prospect. He's a good player. He's got nice size, probably going to be able to fill out well and things of that nature. But tell us everything you've learned about Braden Davis over the last few weeks as you've followed his recruitment all the way up until commitment day on Friday evening.
Yeah, high upside kid. Let's throw all the cliches out there right off the bat and just get him out of the way. Can make all the throws, high upside kid, big arm. But, I think everybody says the same things when it comes to quarterbacks being landed. But seriously, he's like 6'4", 6'5", has a good frame. He's going to continue to add muscle. He does have the intangibles you're looking for at this position: leader, worker, a guy that's going to be really working other kids to recruit them to South Carolina, which is, I think, something South Carolina obviously needed. Y'all, if you're going to sign skill players, which obviously Justin Stepp and those guys on the offensive side, it's big for them to be able to land a big class of receivers that can come and make plays. You have to have a quarterback, and you have to have a guy that has either, at the very least, some personality about him, but it really helps if he can be kind of highly recruited too and have 4 stars by his name, and you can kind of recruit to that. So I think this is big, not just for the player they're getting on the field, but it's big for what they're getting off the field as well. And, I think this is a kid that if you watch his film, and it's kind of interesting, he's listed as a pro-style quarterback on some services, a dual threat on others. I personally think pro-style dual threat is all like very outdated. I think it's crap. You just need to rate them as quarterbacks. But
yeah,
the fact is he's kind of a throw-first quarterback, but he actually does have the ability to extend plays, to run the football. And they're probably, Chris Clark talked to his high school coach. That's something they're going to do a little bit more, of with him this year, his senior year, is actually run him a little bit more and take advantage of that ability. He had some really good testing times at one of the camps up there. So, I think you got a kid that's got a lot to work with here. He's still developing as a passer. He's still coming along there as far as that goes. But here's the thing. Unless you just get a generational type quarterback, like a Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, a guy that's just going to come in and just blow everybody else out of the water, and they're just going to start right off the bat. Unless you get that, then this is how you have to approach quarterback recruiting. It's every single year you add a guy who has a chance, right? Like Braden Davis has a chance if he develops. You can like see it. He has a chance to be a really good quarterback. There's no guarantees with any quarterback. Colton Gothier is a guy that's come in and shown that he has a chance, you know? So you bring in enough of these guys, and then they all have to compete it out and sort of let the cream rise to the top, so to speak. So I think every year you need to land a guy like this, and South Carolina gets their guy for 2022.
Well, all these guys have a better chance than Luke Doty. I mean, he should be playing in high school. When you look at the offer list, Wes, it's interesting, right? I mean, I think maybe the 4 or 5 hats that he had on the table, Stanford, Duke, who am I missing? Georgia Tech,
NC
State, South Carolina. But when you actually go look at the offer list and you see, let me just point out some of the big names here: Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Oregon, Texas A&M. I mean, he's got 28 offers, but those obviously stand out. Top of the country type programs, playoff teams. What type of offers were those? Were those legitimate? Were those committable offers? I mean, I know when you see offer next to somebody's name, there could be some different meanings from time to time. Do you have any insight as to what type of prospect he was to some of those programs and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the specifics for each individual one. I know when those teams offered, those were legitimate offers. I think another thing with quarterback recruiting, we can't put it in the same box as every other position because it's completely different. Almost every team is going into each class saying, I want one quarterback. So it's not like receiver where you're going to take 4 or 5 guys. It's not like running back where you're going to take maybe a couple of guys, sometimes 3, sometimes 1. But point being, the offers go out, but it's almost like musical chairs. So you may have an offer from, let's say, Auburn, and they may offer 5 guys. And it's a real offer. Now they I'm sure have their, this is our top guy, this is our second guy, this is our third guy, this is our fourth guy.
Right.
They're not going to show anyone who's actually, which one do they actually want. That's not good for business to be like, well, hey, we're offering you, but we want this guy more than you, but we're going to offer you to keep you happy. Like it's kind of like The Bachelor almost. Like we're like going on dates, but you don't know the order here. So, I think, yes, they're all legitimate offers most of the time when they come out. Now, some school, Alabama, they're Alabama, y'all. They can send out what you would basically call a camp offer, which is, we're offering you a chance to come to our camp and throw for us. And if we like you, then we're going to accept your commitment. But before then, we're not going to accept your commitment unless you're the number 1 guy up here at the top of the board. So, but point being, it's an offer until it's not. It's like if their top guy commits, then that, but you had an offer. So, you know what? I actually respect the fact that Braden Davis listed his top schools as the ones that were all still showing him love and all still were high on him and all still recruiting him hard, as opposed to choosing South Carolina over Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, and just trying to make it look, a lot of, you get an early offer. It's very easy to just put those as your top schools. A lot of kids do that all the time. They put their best offers, like name offers, as their top schools along with the school they're choosing, So I respect the fact that the final schools were the ones that were like stayed in it until the very end. And, I think if you start to really break down that list, Stanford, I don't know who finished number 2, but I know Stanford, it seemed like he was really high on them. I think he was pretty high on Georgia Tech as well. So, and this was a kid, he did his research, y'all. I honestly respect the heck out of the way he handled the process, because he visited he visited most of these schools on his own accord. And, we're not talking about just like driving through the city of Columbia. When I talked to him after he had taken his trip down here, he was like, I went around campus. I drove by the football ops. I drove by the stadium. They had gone through 5 Points. They had gone, obviously, through the middle of the actual campus. They were out on the Riverwalk area of Columbia. So he did all of his due diligence and really just kind of handled the process, I feel like, in a very respectful, very in-depth way. So I think that can tell you something about the way a kid approaches things as well.
Very smart kid too. Offers from Stanford and Duke and Georgia Tech and places like that. So obviously he's got some brains about him. That speaks to exactly what you just said right there, Wes. Final question for you before we let you run. With the commitment from Tyrese Ross, that of course is another transfer. I know that as we kind of drifted towards the summer, folks like yourself have said, they might not be done in the transfer portal. They might still be looking to add a few names. Do you have a sense of how many additional names Carolina might add in the transfer portal? And have we heard anything about some transfers from South Carolina's program itself?
No, nothing specific as far as from South Carolina. I mean, you'd got to imagine there are going to be and I'm honestly, truly just speaking in a general sense, but you've got to think there are going to be some, right? Like you have a coaching change. Some of the guys stuck it out to see what happened in the spring. You always have transfers in these situations. So we'll see what that looks like. As far as a number of guys coming in, I honestly think it's just going to completely depend on who is out there and who is out there that they can land. Beamer has said it's going to have to be a guy that's a fit. They're not going to take a chance on some kid like that they think is like a knucklehead or something. He's got to be a fit for what they're doing, what they're trying to build as far as their in-house culture. Because, let's be honest, this is not a team that's like one player away from winning the SEC East or something like that. So if you're trying to build your culture up the right way, you don't take a chance on a guy for a year or two that could mess up the locker room sort of deal you're trying to build to win maybe one more game, but if the right kid is out there at the right position, absolutely. From what I understand, they're not going to take guys just to take guys, but they're also not going to not take guys, they're at no point are they going to be like, oh, nope, we're just done. They're going to continue to look into every option because let's be completely honest. There's not really any position that you just say, oh, that position, other than running back. Running back or tight end,
right?
You'd say, all right, we're pretty much done here. Every other position, if some big-time receiver is just like, I want to go to South Carolina and catch 70 balls this year, you got to have the conversation with him, right? If another DB wants to come, you got to have the conversation. If a big-time linebacker wants to, I think, maybe defensive line, you're probably not spending much time on a transfer there either, unless it's just some future first-round draft pick or something that just falls into your lap. So it'll depend on positions, but I don't see them, I don't see them being like sort of I think they're going to be open to pretty much having the conversation with anybody that makes sense.
I don't know how you're going to catch 70 balls if that damn Luke Doty can't even throw it to you. Terrible. All right, 2:00 this afternoon, Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark will have you covered on GC Live. Again, a lot to get to. My gut tells me that Braden Davis, Tyrese Ross, and the Westmoreland kid who's now flipped from Georgia are all going to be a part of your conversation today for an hour. And so will probably the NFL draft. Carolina had a nice showing in the draft, as a matter of fact, over the weekend, and we're going to get into some of that when we return. Wes, thank you so much, man. Really good stuff. Good couple of days for Gamecock football, and we know that Gamecock Central, as always, has us covered. I encourage everybody, if you don't have a membership, to get one. Then you know when these things happen, and you can join in all the fun as well. Thanks, bud.
All right, thanks, guys. You have a good one.
Yes, sir. There you go. Wes Mitchell on Twitter at Wes Mitchell GC. Gamecock Central, of course, online at GamecockCentral.com. All right, let's hit a timeout. The anthem is up next. We'll dabble in the draft when we return. Big draft for the Southeastern Conference. We'll tell you some more about Clemson and Coastal as well as it pertains to the state. And Colin Taylor at 1:30. How does Carolina baseball get out of their midseason funk? We're going to talk about that as well right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
We're going to hear for Gamecock traditions. Baseball is going strong. You'll want to look sharp when you cheer on your Gamecocks. Under Armour, New Era, sideline hats, all with interlocking SC Baseball logo. 18 styles of $10 tees exclusively at Gamecock Traditions. Get on that email list by going to the bottom of the page, enter your email, and always be the first to know about new items as they arrive. You can also add a little Gamecock flair with house signs, garden flags, interior and yard decorations, only at one place, Gamecock Traditions.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Lowcountry. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
JB Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. JB and Darren here until 2 o'clock. Colin Taylor at 1:30. Thanks to Wes Mitchell in hour 1, who joined us from Gamecock Central. It's GC Day, as we'll call it, on our program. 843-321-8893. Go ahead. Send us your texts and stuff. And if you're driving, if you're working, if you're walking, if you're anywhere and you're listening, and you want to say something, just text it, 843-321-8893, and we can make that a part of our program. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever, you can always send us a message and pop it right in as well. We'll put it up on the screen, and we'll make it a part of what we do here. Again, Colin Taylor ahead at 1:30 this afternoon. All right, real quick in the FCS playoffs, Delaware, South Dakota State, James Madison, and Sam Houston all advanced. So they're going to play on Saturday at noon on ESPN. That's South Dakota State and Delaware. And then at 2:30 on ABC, James Madison and Sam Houston, Darren. So looking forward to the semifinals of the FCS playoffs coming up this weekend. I did see a neat Josh Pate tweet yesterday. Oh, a lot of people banging down my doors about the FCS playoffs, the way we need to do it at the FBS level, but none of these guys know who's even in the playoffs, and they're not watching it.
Yeah, you're not watching. You don't care. Yeah, Josh Pate is a very anti-expansion guy for the playoffs as well. Yeah. Very, very much so.
In the draft this weekend, we're all aware of what happened in the first round. We know about that. JC, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. Of course, we talked about them on Friday. By the way, J.C. Horn is the 5th highest drafted Gamecock ever, behind only Jadeveon Clowney, George Rogers, Sterling Sharp, and Troy Williams. And 2 1s and 2 7s. J.C. is the 8th overall pick, and again the 5th highest selection ever coming out of South Carolina's football program. In the 3rd round, it was Ernest Jones heading to Los Angeles to play for the Rams. He's the highest linebacker, folks. He is the highest linebacker taken out of Columbia, South Carolina since 2000. And that was John Abraham, who went to the New York Jets. So in really good company there. Of course, in the 6th round, I was stunned to see Shai Smith still around in the 6th. I was stunned. I thought for sure he was a 5th round guy. If not, I was leaning towards him going up in the 4th. But we talked about it on Friday. There was a lot of guys kind of in that Shai Smith territory, speedsters, around 6 feet tall or so, maybe a little less. Of course, he's a little bit taller than some of those guys he was kind of in that mix with. So it was all about, who did you impress somewhere along the line? But it turns out he doesn't have to go very far. He is from Union, South Carolina. So Shai Smith is going to be playing very close to home. He's the 5th Gamecock to be on the Carolina Panthers roster. That's really neat. So he'll be head up there. Izzy McQuamu's headed to Dallas. I know my good buddy and your good buddy Bobby Harton is happy about that. So we'll see what happens with him. The 227th overall pick, the 43rd pick in the 6th round. By the way, 31st defensive back in history selected out of South Carolina, and the 16th in the last 19 years. It is a proud program when it comes to churning out secondary members. And then they also, of course, had free agents signed. I was surprised that Darius Hutchinson didn't get picked up either. He's headed to Tampa. Colin Hill is headed to Cincinnati. And fullback Adam Prentice is headed to Denver. I do see Tyler's question about baseball. We're going to get there in just a minute. Let me get through the rest of the weekend in the draft. We saw in the 2nd round, Jackson Carman went to Cincinnati out of Clemson. Maury Rogers heads to Green Bay. Who knows if Aaron Rodgers will be throwing to him? Doesn't look like it. Could be a Rodgers to Rodgers connection, but probably not. But he is the 3rd round pick, 85th overall. In the 5th round, Cornell Powell, of course, went to the Chiefs. Pretty good spot to land for Cornell Powell, 181st overall pick in the draft. And then Gage Cervinka on the offensive line, he has signed a free agent deal to head to Chicago. CJ Marable signed an undrafted free agent deal to head to Chicago out of Coastal. So a couple Bears connections in the state. Coastal also had defensive end Taron Jackson drafted in the 6th round to Philadelphia. So he'll play for the Eagles. Clemson is one of 8 schools with at least 5 picks in each of the last 3 drafts. Those other 7, Bama, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and who? Penn State. The Nittany Lions, as Darren proudly wears that hat today. Also, Dabo Swinney, his career draft pick total since 2009 is 69. Trails only Nick Saban at Alabama. So the 2 perceived best coaches in college football also have the most draft picks in college football, and Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban. Nationally, I'll say this. I was surprised, Darren, I was surprised that the Moses kid from Alabama didn't get selected. He's had injuries, and I get that. But I was still surprised. He can really play. He was getting offers in middle school. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Dylan Moses was getting, I think his first offer came in the 7th grade. But because of injuries, he kind of got bumped out. And, he didn't get drafted, Dylan Moses. And I'll tell you this, too. Going into the 2020 season, remember we were talking about the SEC and kind of how some things were going to work out. And I kept saying, and I'm not taking a shot at this kid, and I don't know if this had any impact, if this is a reflection or anything like that. I just found it interesting. That's all. I wasn't sold on Jamie Newman going to Georgia. Like, it just didn't strike me as this is a major difference maker. But a lot of national media, well, Jamie Newman can make Georgia a national title contender. I wasn't sold on that. I just wasn't sure. He didn't get drafted. So I wonder if it was because he opted out or didn't play, or was he maybe, maybe as a prospect, maybe he wasn't as good as some maybe thought. I don't know. I'm not trying to connect the two, but I did just find it interesting. It's a worthy talking point, I think.
I think the way he handled everything the last, say, year and a half, I think it rubbed some people the wrong way. Because, as you said, when he transferred to Georgia, and anyone we had on preseason, right? Josh Pate was saying it. Phil Steele, loving the idea of this kid at Georgia and what he would be able to do, and the impact that it would have not only for Georgia, but around the country, not the SEC, but nationally, right? And then there's some competition in camp all of a sudden. Then he opts out. Now I don't know if did he transfer again? I don't think he transferred again. There was then debate of where his pro day would be held. It's going back and forth. I think he lost some credibility in a lot of people's eyes. And when it's a quarterback heavy draft, why are you going to risk that? I haven't seen, but I would imagine he has already signed an undrafted free agent to go somewhere. I would imagine that he will get a shot.
Well, as of this morning, the list that I was looking at was provided by CBS, and he was not on it.
Okay.
He had not signed yet. Now, I'm with you. I think he will. I mean, Colin Hill has signed a UDFA, an undrafted free agency deal, so I'm sure he will. I'm sure he's probably
Eagles have him.
Did they sign him?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, he has signed with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. And that's a spot in camp. That doesn't mean he's going to make the team or anything like that. We all know this. So he'll report soon and he'll work out, and they'll evaluate him and decide whether they actually want to invite him to camp, fall camp, that is, preseason camp. And then he'll have to kind of clear that hurdle as well. So we'll see how it all works for him. Yeah, I'm with you. Tyler just sent us a little note here. I think Darren popped it up on the screen. Bryce Thompson. Bryce Thompson's a kid who certainly talented. But he had issues off the field. He had an attitude issue on it too. The draft is weird because we hear this all the time, Darren, every year going into the draft, right? Okay, they're doing all these background searches on you. They literally want to know what you ate for lunch when you were in middle school. They want to know, what it was like growing up with around the corner from an IHOP. I mean, they ask some off the wall questions. They really do. I mean, there's a kid who dropped in the draft one time because whatever his hobby was, they were like, he's probably not committed to football. It was strange. And the guy's been in the league now for like 10 years, but he dropped in the draft because something spooked them and they thought that he might not be, quote, committed to football. But then we see all these issues when kids get into the league, they get trouble, they pull guns on people and bad drug deals and, domestic violence and pet abuse, all this other crap. You can come up with anything. There's a player every year that does something stupid, and they might be out for a little while and then, hey, they're back in there. And then we see some kids in college who, they had a rough go of it. And then they still get drafted. So I always say, look, at the end of the day, talent wins out. If you're really that good, if you're a difference maker, they're gonna justify a reason to keep you around for whatever, unless you kill somebody, which I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, you don't really know how it's going to work out, but when you got these guys teeter-tottering on what's the difference between this guy and this guy list, like a Bryce Thompson or like a Jamie Newman, what's the difference between this guy and this guy? Well, that guy quit. This guy didn't quit. Okay, well, let's draft him.
Well, these are multi-million-dollar investments, right? So that's why the background checks are so extensive and are often criticized because of the questions that you ask, because they're trying to unearth every possible thing that could increase their risk in this investment, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's why some guys, right, are not going to get drafted. I see the draft very similarly to how I see college recruiting. I'm not a huge recruiting guy. I don't get caught up in all the rankings or very often. I'll see it. I'm aware of it. But let's see what happens when you get on campus. I mean, you're 17 years old and we're getting all excited about you. And now it's the next level. Now it's, all right, you were great in the SEC. Let's see what you can do in the NFL. That's why I don't get that worked up about the draft. That's why I'm not as pumped as most people are for the opening round of the NFL draft. But I keep an eye on it. Same way I keep an eye on recruiting. Because in the end, talent should, and mostly does win out, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think the greatest example of that is Tom Brady, obviously. I mean, 6th round draft, 7th round, whatever he was, draft pick. Everybody uses that one. There's so many that you can use. I mean, there's a reason why the first round isn't littered with running backs every year. Just a reason. Shelf life isn't long. They're a dime a dozen for the NFL. You got to remember, in this league, it's a little bit different. I mean, the offensive linemen are different. Quarterbacks are everything's different. So they need somebody serviceable generally, and they can find you later on. I think that's what says a lot about Travis Etienne, being drafted in the first round. But yeah, I mean, there's no exact science in any of this. At the end of every draft, in addition to paying attention what happens in state, I always look, well, who didn't get drafted that rings a bell? And you see names like the Newman kid and the Moses kid. If Moses stays healthy, he's going to play a long time. But there's something that has spooked them about that, clearly, because nobody drafted him in 7th round. That's 250 picks. He didn't get picked, and he was a 7th grader who was being offered by colleges. And he had a great career at Alabama outside of injuries. Something is off.
Yes.
And we're going to learn about it at some point in time.
Exactly.
1:16 on Monday afternoon. As far as the guys from this state, what I look at and say, well, who are going to have really good NFL careers? Well, yeah, the knowns are there. I mean, look, I think it's foolish to think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be any type of bust in this league. If there was one surefire thing in this draft, it was, in my opinion, that Trevor Lawrence is going to be playing football a long time. I mean, he is really good, Darren. I look at all these QBs who've been drafted over the years. I like him over all those guys. I really do. Loved him at Clemson. People can pick whatever they want to pick out. Well, he might not do that. Whatever. Dude, this guy is a stud, and I think he's going to be around a long time. That's a known. I do think J.C. Horn is going to be around a long, long, long time. I really do. I'll tell you, too, I really like Amari Rodgers heading to Green Bay. I think that is a neat pick for him. I think he's the type of kid who's going to be around a long time. Shai Smith in Charlotte, I think's great for him too. I think it's a great fit for him, but he's a talent. But I love Ernest Jones. I think Ernest Jones is a future all-pro guy. I really do. He's only gotten better he's one of those guys, Darren, like, you've been around football a long time. There are some kids when you kind of cut on the tape after you watching them play in college for a couple of years, and it never clicked because the name wasn't there. And then you look at it and you go, wow, this guy's really good. Like, he's always around the ball. He doesn't miss tackles. He lays the boom when he needs to. He's solid. You know what I mean? And you got to have solid linebackers. Solid linebackers in the league rack up over 100 tackles every year, and they turn into all pro guys. That's what happens in this league. When you're solid and you actually know how to tackle and you can move left and right and east and west, you're a guy every year who's in the Pro Bowl. And people are like, well, who the hell is that guy? Where'd he come from? That's what Ernest Jones is to me. I really like this kid.
Him and the Kentucky linebacker Davis that the Washington football team grabbed in the first round. Very similar stories in that they arrived on people's radar screens very late in the game, right? I mean, prior to Ernest Jones' last, couple of months, once he declared, it was, okay, let's see. And then by the time draft came around, he was being projected as a top 2-3 round guy. Same thing with the Kentucky linebacker who vaulted his way up into the first round. His vault was more during the season, right after the season, than it was in the draft process. But the NFL obviously likes something about Jones, more than just what they see on tape. The fact that he went through this process and then vaulted during the process is saying, all right, we like his tape. But here's what we think his potential could be. And that's why he's not a first-round guy. That's why he was, a third-round guy. So because we like him, we think he can play. Here's how far we think he can go. And they draft off that potential.
No doubt. And he climbed and climbed and climbed all those boards. So congratulations to all of these young men, all who were drafted and all who signed deals. What a great moment. If you haven't been able to watch some of these videos, I think the one that hit me the most was Izzy McQuamu, who legitimately broke out in a major big boy cry. I mean, it was that was really neat to see. So congratulations to all these young men. I hope they all play a long time, and it's been actually an honor to watch all these kids play in college over the last few years. Great stuff, certainly. By the way, the SEC led all conferences, and it wasn't even remotely close in draft selections. 65. I had somebody say to me yesterday who I was talking with, well, how many did Bama have drafted? I said 12. Oh, take Bama away. That's 53. I said 9 more than the next conference, the Big Ten, which was 44. Still 9 more. Take Bama away. The ACC with 42, the Pac-12 with 28, the Big 12 with 22. Just, again, wasn't close. This league, it set another record that's never happened before, 65. They broke their own from 2 years ago, 64, and the SEC continues to lead the way in college football players heading to the NFL. South Carolina didn't lead the way this weekend in Oxford, though. They struggled. They were swept. All right, let me get to Tyler's question here. What were your first thoughts with Wes Clark's home run off the bat? It was smoked. Yeah, my first thought was, damn, that ball was hammered. And it was hammered. I also will say this. Don't know that was a good thing for him, because he's got to be able to figure out how to do something else besides hit 3-run homers. He started out the weekend 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts. That is horrible. And I know they dropped him in the lineup, and that ball left the yard, and that was good. But the lineup's struggling. We're going to talk to Colin Taylor about some of this here in just a little bit. I happen to know a little bit about baseball, just a little bit. Let me tell you something. You want to know what I would do? And again, I know Darren, Thomas Farr is not the reason to blame at all.
Mm-hmm.
He threw really well last weekend, left a couple pitches in there. They hit him out of the ballpark. Wasn't great on Friday. I thought he would be better. He wasn't great, but I mean, he's not going in there just getting hammered all around the yard, giving up 7-8 runs every time he runs out there. It's not happening. But they can't get off to good starts on Fridays. They just can't. The defense has been not good, and that's putting it polite. Offensively, it's been a struggle that they're not having good at bats.
Mm-hmm.
They're not putting any pressure on defenses. Way too many routine fly balls and pop-ups and things like that. So sometimes, like, you can't run out and field ground balls for your third baseman. All right. You can't go back there and block balls in the dirt for your catcher. You can't pick balls at first for your first baseman. You can work on it all week, but you can't do it for him in the game. So sometimes as a coach, you just have to find ways to spark teams. And there's a multitude of ways to do that. Everybody's a little bit different. I'll tell you what I would do. I'd start Brett Carey on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a shot at Thomas Farr. It's not even some would look at that as, well, it's not his fault. I know it's not his fault, but we got to get these guys going. And Brett Carey, he can absolutely start. Now, the question would be, well, why wouldn't you start Will Sanders or Brandon Jordan? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. I don't think Brandon Jordan is a Friday night guy, okay? And I don't think Will Sanders is a Friday night guy yet. He's young. He's confident in his stuff. He's not scared to come right at you and throw it in there. And those are all tremendous, tremendous qualities to have. But on Friday night, you have to be elite in this league. Period. And when you are going up against somebody else's ace, being overconfident in your stuff as a young buck freshman can get you in a lot of trouble. And giving up 4 or 5 runs, you lose the game on Friday nights in the SEC. It's been proven every week. Carolina's giving up 3, 4, 5 runs, they lose. So I would start the guy who gives you the best chance to get through 7 innings, and maybe that sparks you. Now, how does it spark you offensively? Brett Carey pitching on Friday nights, Darren, that doesn't mean he's walking around giving, all right, well, you got to hit a home run here. That's not what that means. It just means he's providing some energy, and maybe that energy translates to the offensive side. You're going to be at home against the top 5, top 10 team coming up on Friday night in Mississippi State. That is the type of, you need that energy. You're going to have the energy of the ballpark. Maybe you have the energy of a new arm. You need it. And I'll tell you one other change I'd make at the top of the lineup. I'd lead Wimmer off, and I'd hit Brady Allen in the 2-hole. And the reason that I would do that is because I'm not saying it's guaranteed that Brandon Wimmer's going to get on, but if you can get him on, you have instant pressure on the defense, instant pressure, because he can move, and Brady Allen's your best hitter. So you might be able to hit and run with him. You might be able just to put a ball in play, and he just advances on that note. Then a ball in the dirt gets him over. They got to find ways to put pressure on defenses, and they're not doing it at all.
The spark is a real thing, right? I mean, it's not a tangible thing. It's not something you can put your arms around it. It's very similar to whatever that spear thing is that they'll carry around. It's anything to change your mindset and put you in a positive mindset, which is sports psychology is obviously a big thing. It's very big for baseball players, specifically at the plate, specifically if you're struggling. And we know that at least conversations have happened about whether or not Carey can do both. Can he start and come out of the back of the bullpen in the same weekend? It's happened before, and Jay Phillips was on with us, and he said when he talks to Ray Tanner's not really going to say much about the baseball team for obvious reasons. But when Mark Kingston was on with Jay Phillips up at 107.5 The Game, he's the one who mentioned to Jay, we've had conversations like that. So it's not as wild as it sounds. It's probably much closer to a possibility than a wild idea just to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I would probably take it in a different direction though, because Andrew Peters and Julian Bosnick can both close. They've proven that. So, if you started Carey and he runs you 7 or 8 innings and he's up around 100 pitches, who cares if he comes back on? You try to win that one. They've lost a lot of game 1s and won a lot of game 2s and 3s, of course, until this weekend. But look who they did that against. I mean, none of those teams were named Ole Miss, Mississippi State, or Arkansas. All right, and they didn't. I mean, I know that they won one game against Arkansas, but they didn't win game 3. So they lost game 1 against Vanderbilt. They didn't win game 2. They did win game 3. They did Arkansas and Vanderbilt. They didn't come back and win both games 2 and 3. They didn't do that. The tougher competition in this league, you lose on Friday night, it's a high possibility you're losing the series. So you got to win one of them. I mean, you just have to. So, try to win Friday night. If you feel like Brett Carey's going to give you a start him. I mean, a spark, start him and let him go 100 pitches or whatever it takes. And then if he's out the rest of the weekend, whatever, who cares? You got a whole bullpen full of guys. We've watched them all year long. Figure it out from there. And of course, I'm not saying anything that Skylar Meade doesn't know. I mean, he's forgotten more about it than I'll ever know. But they need a spark bad. You can't go 5 innings, giving up 3 runs on Friday night and being down 3-1. Unfortunately, you're going to have to put pressure on somebody's shoulder on Friday night, Darren. And that type of pressure is going to be, you know what? This sucks to say, but I need you to pitch 7 innings or 8 innings tonight, not give up more than 1 run, because we can't count on our offense scoring more than 1 run right now. That sucks.
Brett Carey is the guy who has the mentality to handle that.
That's right.
Skylar looks him in the eye and says, dude, I need you to man up and do what you've been doing, and we need you right. He's the type of guy that you say that to him. He's like, all right.
Okay.
Let's go. And remember what Skylar said to us, whatever, Friday, Thursday, whenever he was on with us. Remember what he said about the bullpen, how they've used the bullpen differently than the majority of other top teams around college baseball because they haven't had to tax their biggest arms as much as other clubs. So this is the type of move that is available to you because you have that flexibility late in the season and heading into the postseason.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no question. And your comment is exactly right. He is the one guy on that staff who you can say that to. Okay. I mean, it's very, very, I'm not, don't misunderstand me here. I'm not trying to compare him to the best arms in the history of the program, but it's very Michael Rothish. It's very Kip Baltnightish. It's very a kid that, you know, I went to school with, even though he wasn't a Friday night ace for a long time. He did get some Friday night starts. Will Atwood, who was a lefty, you know, had this mentality of, yeah, whatever. I mean, you know, hey, I want to let you know, Mark McGuire is in their lineup today. All right. You know, I mean, it just never, he's okay. Duh. You know what I mean? It's one of those type guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of Brett Carey. And they, you know, and I'm not saying that Thomas Farr has a deer in the headlights look. I'm not saying he's scared of anything. It's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is they need a spark. And like you just said, to your point, Scott Ramey could walk up to him and say, it's kind of an FYI here. We don't score more than like one run on Fridays. So you can't give up more than one run. All right. Maybe he does. Maybe he gives up 100. I don't know. But they got to try something different, because right now, same old is not working. And getting off on the wrong foot against top 5 teams in the country every weekend, that ain't going to get you anywhere. And where you want to be is a regional host with a number 1 seed behind it in the postseason. And they're not there right now. I think they're falling off that line. And to Craig's point, yeah, Ole Miss and Arkansas are the best hitting teams he's seen in the SEC this year. Well, they are the best hitting teams in the SEC. There's no question about that. And, you know, but some other guys have beaten them. And Carolina beat Arkansas once. And you got to, when you're going to go up against elite pitching, you got to have elite pitching. Carolina, for the most part, has elite pitching. But on Friday night, they need a spark, and maybe Brett Carey's the guy to give it to them. I'll bet you this. We'll know over the next couple of days if he's going to get any type of start like that, or if Carolina plans on changing anything up. We'll see. We'll also see Colin Taylor on the other side of this break, so let us catch our breaths. You catch yours, and we'll be right back here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every 2021 Tiguan, $3,500 off. Every 2021 Atlas, $5,300 off. Every new Volkswagen available with 0 down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump? Strike 2! If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save $5,300 on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Spring is officially here, and there's no better place to bring it in than the Dog and Duck. 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Park West, Bell Hall, and Clements Ferry Road, all of them with gorgeous outdoor seating to take advantage of their daily food and drink specials. Through the end of April, $5 Sweetwater pints. Food specials like Taco Tuesday and the Game Day Burger every Wednesday. It's all available at Dog and Duck. There are 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
You are listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
Okay, 1:34, final segment, Monday afternoon. It is Power Hour, powered by Wando Power Equipment in the Low Country. That's wandopower.com. Very similar to that Wes Clark home run that you saw over the weekend. That's about the power of the Hustler zero-turn mower. Bigger, stronger, faster, just like Wes Clark, although he's not going to get any NIL fees off of this read. Sorry about that, brother. You can also rent yourselves a trailer or a mower or an aerator or whatever it is from Wando Power Equipment. If you're going to be anywhere near the Low Country, or if you just don't trust anybody but our friends right here in the Low Country in Wando Power Equipment, wandopower.com. I'm telling you, just check out the website. You'll see what I'm talking about. They rent, you can finance, it's all available there, and they've been in business for well over 30 years here in our neck of the woods. Also kind of in our neck of the woods, just up I-26. It's about an hour and 41 minutes northwest, at least.
About.
That's exactly what it takes me to get to Columbia. That's where we find Colin Taylor with Gamecock Central. He is, let's see. So he's our two-hole hitter today because Wes Mitchell was our leadoff guy. So Colin's going to hit the two-hole. What's up, man?
How we doing? I appreciate getting some RBI opportunities for you guys today.
There you go.
Yeah, you're getting a couple more than generally the two-hole hitters get in Carolina's lineup these days.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, tough weekend for those guys. Look, Colin, I was just throwing around some things in our last segment, and let me say this again. Carolina can't blame their Friday night problems or some of their weekend issues that they've seen in the last couple of weeks, just the last couple of weeks, because up until then, it's been a special season in the SEC. They can't blame everything or anything for that matter, really, on Thomas Farr. It's not like he's not keeping them in games. I mean, he's given it all he's got. I mean, he hasn't been perfect, but he's certainly been serviceable. His performance against Arkansas was pretty good, except for 2 pitches. It was really good. But they need a desperate spark on Friday nights. And you watch this league every weekend. You can't go down 0-1 against the best programs in the Southeastern Conference every weekend and expect to turn around and win games 2 and 3. Eventually that streak was going to run out, and it did. I mentioned I would highly consider starting Brett Carey to provide a spark. And he's the type of guy you can say, hey, look, man, we don't score more than 1 or 2 runs on Fridays. So you can't let more than 1 run across the plate. And he's the type of guy who can handle that. Might not happen, but he's the type of guy who can handle that type of conversation. What would you make of that? Maybe bumping Brett Carey, who has been your closer, into a Friday night lights role.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown the ability to do it. He's a guy that's obviously and would get one of your better pitchers on staff more meaningful innings than he's gotten over the last maybe 2 weekends outside of, he obviously pitched a lot on, I guess it would be game 2 of that doubleheader. But yeah, moving him there would give you some flexibility and give you your best pitcher pitching a lot of meaningful innings early in a series. And then however you want to structure it behind him, if that's, what they want to do. I'm not sure if they're going to, but if they do, then it would allow you to move a Thomas Farr or a Will Sanders or whoever you want to into the bullpen, and kind of a big role there. And you have plenty of guys that could start coming out of the bullpen, whether that's an Andy Peters or Bosnick or, Carrier or something like that. So not a bad idea. I don't know. They have a lot of faith in Thomas Farr, and obviously he's not been the biggest issue, but we'll see as the week goes on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great point because, I don't want anybody to misconstrue or misinterpret this conversation that Thomas Farr is the problem. He's not. They can't hit on Friday, and defensively they were pitiful Friday night down in Oxford. But, in baseball, sometimes a spark can get you going, and it just seems, Colin, that this weekend, maybe there are some things that kind of align for that type of major change in a rotation. You're at home. You've got a top 5 team coming to Founders Park. You've got increased attendance. You're under the lights. That feel, and then somebody who's providing energy in the ballpark and in the dugout for 6 or 7 innings, maybe holding those guys, and only a run or 2, which means you'd certainly be in the ball game if they've only scored a run or 2. That can get you can get some guys going. And so I think it's important to understand why I would even suggest this rather than just looking at the facts. And the facts are Thomas Farr has not been the big problem.
Yeah, and what could be interesting, and we're just kind of spitballing ideas here, but the openers become such a big piece of baseball now that maybe if they wanted to switch things up, and again, we're just spitballing, but you could use Brett Carey one time through the order and then bring in a guy like Thomas Farr, who obviously has had some troubles the third time through the order. You get one time through with a guy like Brett Carey, and then Thomas Farr comes in and allows you to pitch deeper into games. So you would use Brett Carey early, and then maybe he's available for game 2 or 3 if you need him. But there are a lot of ways with the depth they have as a pitching staff right now that you're able to do a lot of different things and be a little bit more experimental than maybe some other teams in the league can be.
In saying that, obviously we're throwing out specific changes that we're not necessarily anticipating, but just a discussion being had. Do you maybe expect to see some changes from South Carolina this week when Mark speaks with the media? Do you expect to hear anything?
I'm not sure right now. I think they are discussing that maybe as we speak, as they get ready for practice this week. And we won't know anything until we hear from Mark Kingston and an availability likely this week, if they're even entertaining the thought of changing some stuff around.
One other thing I kind of throw out there is the best, at least hitter I see on this lineup and have all year long, even when Wes Clark was hitting all those long balls and just tearing the cover off of it, is Brady Allen. And he's been sensational, obviously, as the leadoff guy, but I almost wonder if it would be better. They don't, Colin, they don't put enough pressure on opposing defenses. And what I mean by that is there are way too many easy outs. I'm not talking about the strikeouts. Strikeouts are there. They're part of it now, and you just have to expect you're going to see them. But the pop-ups and the routine fly balls and things like that's literally does nobody any good. And so you almost have to wonder if it's better to maybe slide him into that 2-hole and maybe try Braylon Wimmer up there in the top of the line. It's not guaranteeing you that Wimmer's going to be on base, but if he is on base, you've got the best hitter in your lineup up with him on, which provides more opportunity to put more pressure out there on defenses, get a guy in scoring position, allow for little things to happen. They just got to find a way to get the opposing defenses back on their heels as opposed to leaving them on their toes.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest issue for this offense the last couple weeks, and in part the entire SEC slate. For a lot of it is they've struggled to get on base. I mean, they have a team on base percentage of, I want to say, I'm looking at it now, I mean, very, very limited. I think it's just over 300 in SEC play, and that doesn't lend itself to putting up big innings if you're not hitting home runs. And, they only have 61 walks in SEC play in 21 games, and you're looking for something to change. But the problem is, I mean, outside of Brady Allen, there aren't many guys with on-base percentage is higher than him in league play. I mean, Colin Burgess is 358, but you're not going to put him in the leadoff spot. Andrew Eister's at 353, which is why I think they tried to put him in the 2-hole behind him. But David Mendham's at 317, and Josiah Seidler and George Khalil are the next two guys, and Wes Clark's at 311. So there aren't many guys ahead of Brady Allen in terms of being able to get on base. And that's why I think you've seen him settle in that leadoff spot. And the biggest thing for him now is getting him on base to have guys behind him that can drive him in. And that's why I think you saw some Andrew Eister in the 2-hole last week. And the bottom of the lineup's doing a good job of getting on but in front of Brady Allen. And now it's just a matter of stringing together consecutive hits in an inning, because they just haven't been able to do that in SEC play.
Yeah, it's been a real challenge in this league. When you watch those games this weekend, Colin, I mean, the human eye, even if you're not a very educated baseball person, you could see the difference. And I get it. Look, I know that Ole Miss is one of the more talented offensive teams, not just in the SEC, in the country, because if you're one of the better hitting teams in this league, you're one of the best offensive teams in college baseball. But their approach was entirely different. I mean, it was just entirely different from what we saw with South Carolina. And, people complain about it, and I get it. But when you look at this lineup, I mean, it's May, Colin, like you kind of are who you are, right? I mean, you got a bunch of guys here who are big, powerful guys. You don't have a bunch of speedsters. You don't have a bunch of dudes who are slapping it left and right. I mean, you just kind of are who you are. And so is this, in your opinion, a team that is, are we looking for them to catch fire, or are we just looking for them to find a way to become consistent again? Like, what is best for this program?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get close to postseason play, I mean, catching fire is always important. And when you have such a power-happy offense like this is, then and so momentum-based that getting fire and getting guys firing on all cylinders at the right time is so vitally important. So I'd say that one. And it's an offense that's been inconsistent, but what you want is to have 4 or 5 guys, if not more, that are swinging a bat at a really, really good pace. And they just don't have that right now. And you've seen some of the results. And so now you kind of saw it somewhat in 2018 when they went to a super. They had 2 or 3 or 4 offensive guys that came on right at the right time. They got their pitching in order, and they went on to a super regional. And I think that's what you're kind of hoping for South Carolina, is guys to start clicking because they have talent, guys to start clicking and finding out ways to, get on base and hit for the power that they were hitting for earlier in the season and earlier in SEC play. And when you do that and you mix that with what's a top 3 or 4 pitching staff in the SEC and, thus in the country, it turns into a pretty dangerous team come, June or, into May and then June.
What do you think what do you think's going on over at third? Brennan Malone is obviously a kid that they brought in expecting to literally step in and play. And he is just, I feel for him. I mean, I really feel for him. I don't look out there and see a kid with no talent. I don't look out there and see a bad player. I look out there and see somebody who's just mentally defeated. Colin, between the ears, it looks like he is. If people are frustrated watching him play, I can assure you this: he is twice as frustrated as you are, because he's the one that just can't seem to figure it out. What do you think's going on with Brennan Malone?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mental thing, and it's not to say he's not a mentally tough guy, because he is, but baseball is a sport that snowballs on you. And when one thing goes wrong and you can't get it done, you don't have the benefit of taking – if you're in the lineup, you don't have the benefit of taking off, a week like football or 3 days like basketball and getting it right. You have to go back out there the next day and produce, and it can snowball on you, and it's hard to catch your breath sometimes. And I think that's where Brennan's at, and he's just trying to get things right. And he's shown flashes of it. He had that stretch in the middle of SEC play where he did, but it's tough in the middle of a season to kind of find a spot where we're able to tread water. And it seems like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, just in terms of consistency. But he's got all the talent in the world, was a top 100 prospect coming out of high school and turned down significant money to come to South Carolina. So you hope that he can figure it out. But, if he's the guy that comes on later in the season and kind of figures it out and gets back to what they think he could be, I mean, that could be a cornerstone of your lineup wherever you want to put him, because they like him. They liked him at the beginning of the year at the 2-hole, and they've used him more in the bottom third of the order now. But if he can come on and give you something over these next 3 weeks and then into the SEC tournament, he has a chance to do something and give this offense a spark that they need.
Yeah, Colin Taylor, Gamecock Central, I think it's a really good point. And, as we came into the year, Colin, it felt like, listening to Mark and Skylar and kind of seeing those guys perform a little bit, you felt like, okay, well, they've got about 13 guys or so that they really feel comfortable with. How many guys you feel like they feel comfortable with right now?
Less. You see it that they've run with, even though the offense has struggled over the last 6 conference games, they've stuck with pretty much the same lineup, and all they've done is really shift some things around. So it's a group that they feel comfortable with, probably 6, 7, 8 of those guys. And now it's just a matter of getting them hot, because, like you said, at this point, you are what you are. And now it's a hope of getting guys hot at the right time and getting them playing at a level where you can make some noise, hopefully, in the postseason once you get down to Hoover and then get into a regional.
All right. You mentioned regionals. The regional projections aren't necessarily out yet. And when they do come out today or tomorrow by whomever service you look at, they're not final and they're not set in stone. Those are nothing. They're just projections. But one would have to believe, Colin, that this weekend was an important weekend for both the Rebels and Carolina and Oxford. Whomever won that series potentially was going to have the regional projection this week as a host, and the other will be on the outside looking in. Going into the weekend, it was the Gamecocks who were a projected top seed, 14th overall and hosting at Founders Park. Ole Miss had been bumped off that one line, but that's now potentially changed. Ole Miss, of course, swept the series. What do you think that looks like right now between those two teams? And, oh, by the way, Florida took 2 of 3 from Vanderbilt this weekend. They're now back in the mix to host a regional.
Yeah, and if you weren't going to bring up Florida, I was. I mean, things are just in terms of trending for regional. Obviously, Ole Miss and the arrows for Ole Miss and Florida are pointing up, and South Carolina pointing down right now. And that's not to say South Carolina won't be one of the 20 teams, 20 sites that get announced next week, or they can't play their way into it, because they absolutely can with the schedule they have left. But right now, 1-5 in your last 6 SEC games, with Ole Miss winning 4 of their last 6, and Florida obviously taking those 2, you're in a tough spot, and you need to start winning some games. And you have a perfect opportunity this week against a good non-conference or a good midweek opponent in North Florida, and then a top 5 RPI team in Mississippi State. But when those come out, my guess is South Carolina, they were already a 13 or 14 overall seed in the tournament. My guess is they'll probably be in the 2 line against probably a lower seeded regional host. And then Ole Miss and Florida probably in contention for one of those last couple regional slots. But that doesn't mean that South Carolina can't play their way back into it, because they have the talent too, and they got some big series. 2 of the last 3 are at home against some good teams that are good RPI boosters for a chance to work yourself back into it.
Well, that's right. I mean, Mississippi State right now, based on D1 Baseball's rankings, is at 4, and Tennessee is at 5, and Kentucky is not ranked, but you have to go on the road. Road series wins in the SEC get you major bonus points, and it's a place that Carolina has traditionally struggled, but that's in a couple weekends, so we'll hold that conversation for a little bit longer. Here's what I want to know from you. Again, we've got 3 weekends left, okay? I do think, Colin, at 11-10, it is very fair to say Carolina probably needs to find a way to go 6-3 in those last 9 to really feel great. And you got to win your midweeks. By the way, Clemson playing better helps them if they can go up there and win at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Got to win your midweeks, probably a 6-3 record, and you could probably if you go 6-3, you've won at least 2 of the series, if not all of them via a 2-1 series record. You'd feel really good about that. We all know. My question though is how many from the SEC? Because there seemingly has been 5 or 6, but Carolina, Florida, Ole Miss. I mean, Florida jumping right back in this thing. Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Tennessee. They're all getting one. Could there be 7, Colin? Could there be 8? Could there be 8 potential regionals hosted by Southeastern Conference baseball programs?
Do I think it'll happen? No. Will 8 teams necessarily warrant a regional? Probably, just in terms of RPI and all that fun stuff. But I don't think the NCAA is going to give you half your regionals in the same conference. But, I mean, I was talking to my father-in-law today about it, and I'm reading things off. I'm like, well, Vanderbilt's going to get one. Florida could get one. Arkansas is definitely going to get one. Mississippi State's definitely going to get one. And I'm like, Tennessee is going to get one. And all of a sudden it's like, well, where does South Carolina fit into that? Where does Florida fit into that? Ole Miss. And then you start running out of spots to put other teams. So, yeah, I think the SEC has a legitimate shot at getting maybe 8 or 9 or maybe even 10 teams in the NCAA tournament, with probably half of those being regional sites. So it's as deep a conference as you can find. And I think everyone has this sky is falling feeling about South Carolina, but it's not. They're still RPI top 15. They have some very big series coming up at home, and should be an RPI top 20 team at the end of the year. And you never know when you get into regionals too, wherever they play, whether that's SEC or another team that they got a chance to make some noise.
Yeah, I agree. Colin, I personally think it's going to be the top 3 teams in both the East and the West that get regionals. I don't think there's any way that the SEC is not going to have 6 regional host sites. If it went that way today, it'd be Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Vandy, Tennessee, and Florida, and the Gamecocks will be on the outside looking in. And to your point, by the way, with 10 teams, I know some people might sniff at that and say, man, I don't know. Well, good luck trying to convince, at least as it stands now, convince the committee that Bama at 28-15, 11-10, and the league shouldn't be in there. We all know that Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, Vanderbilt are in there from the East. Georgia's projected in. Kentucky's record is the same as Georgia's, 10-11 in the league. The Wildcats 26-15 overall, better overall record, or same overall record basically as Georgia. And, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi. 10 teams. And I don't know that I've ever seen the SEC this good at the top. We've seen it great. We know that. We've seen it. But there are 6 or 7 interchangeable teams at the top of this league right now, Colin. I don't think I've ever seen that many in this league.
No, and South Carolina they've won 11 games in 7. They're 11-10 and are like 7th in the SEC right now.
Yeah.
When in a normal year does that happen? When you're thinking about that, and heck, we didn't even mention LSU, who played Arkansas tough, and they are 7-14 in the conference, but a top 25 RPI team. This is just as good a league as you can find, and it's you talk about it being top heavy, but it's not. You have teams that are good that are 3 or 4 games below 500 because they just have to play a top 10 team every week. And like I said, South Carolina's a game above 500 7 weeks into the year in the league, and are 7th just because that's just how it works. And they've had to play all these top 10 teams, and it's as deep a league as you're going to find in the country. And I think that's going to pay a lot of dividends for South Carolina and for every team that makes the tournament, going up against non-SEC teams, because they've faced top 10 picks on the mound week in and week out, and offenses that can rake. And it's just, I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to watch how it finishes up and then what it looks like in postseason play.
That's a good point on LSU. They're 7-14 in the league, but they finished with Auburn, Bama, and Texas A&M. If they could be 3 or 4 games above 500 in that and get close, 14-16 or 13-17 or something, and maybe get a game or 2 in the SEC tournament, which, by the way, LSU seemingly always plays very well in. Yeah, there could be 11. We'll leave it there, man. We know that you got us covered as well as anybody can at Gamecock Central. It's a busy day on Gamecock Central. Bunch of recruiting information to get to from over the weekend, certainly, too. Hey, what are you eating tomorrow in the press box attire, or is that going to be a special announcement pregame on Twitter?
I feel like that's got to be a special. I can't give it away too much.
Okay.
I feel like it's got to be a little bit of a special announcement. Maybe I'll get with the equipment staff tonight, i.e. my wife, and figure out something that I can wear tomorrow that will actually better suit me than probably what I'd pick.
Dude, Colin, true story. Every single one of the TV games that I've done, and that's a lot over the years, the wife picks out the tie and the shirt. And so basically what happens is, all right, I'm going to have this jacket or this suit, and she picks out the tie and the shirt, and oftentimes like a secondary option before I even hit the road.
Oh yeah, no, it's the same with me. Like before games, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go start packing all the other stuff I need to pack, or maybe take a shower. You figure out what I'm going to wear, and I'll just throw it in the suitcase.
Yep.
That's about it.
Yep.
Well, I
don't know fashion.
Yeah.
I can pick out this stuff, but if you look good in a suit, then give it to me.
Yeah. Now, if I could wear solid color T-shirts and khaki shorts in the press box, I think I have myself covered. But if I got to put anything on that's nice, no way. I'll be able to figure it out.
Oh, you two. Y'all sure are something. I sense a fashion podcast coming our way soon. Goldwater and Taylor.
So look, it sounds good.
Suited up with
Goldwater
and Taylor.
Yeah, it sounds like a 5 Points boutique at that point.
Yeah. That's what we're here for. Colin, have a great week, man. Thank you so much for all your time.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys having me on as always.
Later.
You got it, brother. A couple quick parting shots. Dustin Johnson will play at Congaree National when that major comes to town, or comes to the state of South Carolina in June. So our in-state guy has committed, which is neat because the U.S. Open is the following week out on the West Coast, by the way. The Falcons are not picking up the 5th-year option on Hayden Hurst. They did draft Kyle Pitts. So Hayden Hurst will be looking for a new organization for this coming year. And it is National Montana Day.
Hey!
We love Montana. My in-laws are in Wyoming. But it is happy birthday to the amazing significant other of J.C. Sherbert, Nat. I don't know how she handles him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So happy birthday, Nat. And because it's National Montana Day, maybe JC will, I don't know, pack you in the car and drive you out to Montana and Wyoming because he keeps telling me about this Western trip y'all want to take.
Yeah, but they're stuck in Chicago. So you're going to have to go on that trip.
Well, happy birthday to Nat. Get the hell out of there and go west. Go drive Montana and Wyoming. Happy birthday, Nat. Thank you for allowing JC to be on our program on Wednesdays for an hour. Thanks to Darren. Thanks to Colin. Thanks to Wes. We're back tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show.